I just wanted to put a video out there and acknowledge kind of all the issues with college football. Obviously, my tweet from last night got a lot of attention, so I just wanted to kind of bring you a background of what I'm thinking and why. First of all, I want to be very clear. This virus is a problem, and I'm not suggesting that it's not. It is a big deal. I'm wearing a mask when I'm out in public, and in particular in areas where social distancing is a problem, but trying to adhere to all the CDC guidelines, me and my family, because it is a big deal. 150,000 people losing their lives is a sobering number. So it is a big deal, and I'm not suggesting that it's not. I also want to make sure that we realize total numbers of cases and/or mortality doesn't give us a clear and specific picture of the risk when assessing that risk for a specific age group. And when you're talking specifically about college football, I do feel like we are talking about a specific age group. And there is data available that we don't have to just go to the blunt instrument of total numbers, and we can look at specific numbers per the CDC, and we can see that this virus is statistically close to zero threat to college-age kids. They're at far greater danger from things like car accidents, homicide, suicide, heart disease, even lightning strikes than they are at danger from COVID. And so I want to avoid the inaccurate argument that I don't care about the well-being of student athletes and specifically football players, because it's actually the exact opposite. The factors I'm going to lay out here in a moment are all because I care about the well-being of the college football player. Next thing, before I get into these 5 arguments, if you will, or case for college football, I do think that these institutions need to start giving us the information that they're being told by their medical experts. I think that would help, right? I think that should be something that we should all see and know and debate potentially if debate is needed. Are there serious cases? Are most cases asymptomatic, mild? Are the serious cases needing to be hospitalized through the testing that we've seen in the summer months on campuses? Those are all important things that I think that we need to see here in the coming days. But for now, I want to get into these 5 arguments or cases, if you will, for a college football season. First and foremost would be those that want to opt out should be able to opt out, and they should be able to do so without fear of losing their scholarship. I think that that's very clear. And there are kids that have compromised immune systems. Maybe they have family members with compromised immune systems. They need to be able to make that choice without fear of retribution, and their scholarship should be honored, and it will be honored. And in almost every single case that I have heard of, at least, it is being honored. Now, there is a caveat. If you do opt out, I do believe that you should be forced to opt out wholly, right? You should not be around the team, because if it is that dangerous for you to be around the team and be around anybody, even within the testing protocols and procedures, you should probably be in close to isolation. So I don't think that you should be allowed to be around the team, involved in team activities of any sort, and that even means school activities and things like tutoring. Number 2, I don't believe anything should be in stone, right? And I think that we've seen this from other leagues as they've come out and they've had to adjust. In particular, things like the PGA Tour has had to adjust. Those revisions and adjustments should be made, and they should be expected. So that's another case, is that nothing that would be given right now would be in stone. And now more of the player-specific things. I think players will be way better off and way healthier, and this is maybe the most important one, within the structure of football than outside of the structure of football. Listen, when you're in a community of testing and tracking and protocols and procedures with medical and healthcare right at your fingertips, with nutritional and diet needs right at your fingertips, with social distancing guidelines, mask wearing, so on and so forth, academic structure and accountability in all those areas, that is a safer bubble, if you want to call it that, than being out in the normal fray of everyday life. There's no doubt in my mind that being on campus within the structure of football and even playing the sport of football, these players will be much safer than if they were just told, hey, the season is canceled, go on your way. The only way that you could get much safer than being within these testing protocols twice a week, so on and so forth, and the guidelines, would be if you were in isolation and or quarantine. So this notion that it is somehow extremely dangerous for the kids to be within these testing protocols and procedures, I think is false. By the way, being in that community, you know that everyone else is going through the same testing protocols and procedures, and that's very important. Alternatively, let's say you're not, you would not know if you were an asymptomatic case, which, by the way, the majority of this age group would be an asymptomatic case. So that asymptomatic case, without the procedures and the structure of football, would then be at greater risk to be a driver of community spread. And in some cases, remember now, these kids would be going back to multi-generational homes. So you're talking about a very dangerous aspect of being in a situation where you don't know if you have the disease, rather than being within the protocols of actually playing college football. So that's number 3. I think that there are 2 giant impacts, and these are the last 2 issues. The human impact of a cancellation. I think it's been well documented across the spectrum that people have been dealing with suicide and depression at a far greater rate during the COVID lockdowns in the last 5 months than they were before. The hotlines have been inundated during this pandemic, and that's a problem. The mental health of players, I think, needs to be considered. It would be naive to think that we wouldn't see a dramatic rise in depression and the overall deterioration of the mental health of these college football players, many of whom have been singularly focused on their sport and their achievement in their sport, maybe their entire lives. And to take that away from them at this point, I think would be very detrimental to their mental health. And let's not forget that this age group specifically struggles with mental health maybe to a far greater degree than other age groups. And we know this because the second leading cause of death amongst college-age kids in America is suicide. That's a sobering fact that we need to be aware of when we're talking about taking something away as important as college football from these college football players. I think it's also something that we should consider and really lean into, that it's not just potentially the effects of depression and suicide, but to deal with that deterioration of their mental health, they could turn to substance abuse. We've seen substance abuse go crazy during this pandemic, and in some cases double and triple in some of the studies that we've seen. And I think the absence of structure and accountability would drive even more substance abuse in college-age kids than if they were within the structure and accountability zone of a college football season. We might see them fall behind academically, and in some cases, they're losing the ability to increase the value of their future athletic endeavors. Just think last year, Joe Burrow was a middle round draft pick, and all of a sudden he had one great year, and then he's the first pick in the draft. We're taking that away from these players, the ability to actually make a life-changing jump when it comes to monetizing their skill, which they have not been able to do to this point in their life. And the last factor that I would point to is the financial impact. And it's a significant one, and it's not one that I'm talking about lining people's pockets. I think it's about the fact that you're going to lose potentially thousands, tens of thousands of scholarship opportunities across intercollegiate athletics. Intercollegiate athletics right now provide about 150,000 scholarship opportunities to higher education based on athletic excellence and achievement. And this would be a devastating blow to boys and girls across the country who are trying to achieve right now in order to attain one of those opportunities, one of those 150,000 opportunities, in order to continue their education. And in many cases, this is their only way to get that higher education, in particular when you look at the extreme cost of higher learning. And some of these universities, that financial impact is dramatic. So that's why I think that we should be not looking at this from a single factor analysis, but a multi-factor analysis. Is the disease dangerous? Yes, it is. Is it dangerous for college-age kids? Probably not as much as what we're being pushed to believe. I think that there are greater dangers to canceling the season rather than actually playing through it and getting within these structures and the protocols so that we can make sure players are safe. And by the way, those coaches and support staff members would be in the same protocols and procedures, so they in turn would be in a safer position rather than if they were out in the real world having to deal with unknown community spread. Let's start covering this from every angle. And I think that that's an important factor and one that I hope we can get to in the coming weeks.